today we're going to be talking all about travel nursing contracts. So I'm going to show you guys my actual travel nursing contract, and we're going to go through it step by step, and I'm going to give you guys a couple tips for when you sign your very own contract. Stay tuned. I'm Emma Pointer from TTT Nursing, travel nurse, author, and coach. If you are new to the channel and you are interested in travel nursing videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure you click the bell to be notified when I post new content. So I don't know if you guys saw my last video all about pay. If you didn't, I will link that in the cards above here. This video is going to be pretty similar to that one, and that I'm going to be talking mostly from my laptop. So here in just a minute, I'm going to switch over and I will see you guys there. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that this is my actual contract. I did go ahead and block out a couple things like the company, facility, address, and name, and some of my personal identifying information. But other than that, what I'm going to show you guys is 100% actual real life example of a contract. So we're going to go through it. I'm going to give you some tips along the way. And at the end of this video, you guys should be fully prepared to sign your very own contract. So let's get started. I'll meet you over there. Okay guys, thanks for meeting me here. So this is my actual contract. If you watched the video where I go through my pay, you saw this contract already on there. So in that video, we went over everything that you need to know about pay within your contract. So in this video, I'm not gonna re-go over all that just for the sake of time. I wanna focus on the actual contract and what we're looking for in the contract. If you wanna know about pay again, I will put a link to that video up in the cards here. Let's get started. So this contract, I signed it August 5th, 2019. It has my name right here. You guys can see this is my real contract. The facility name listed, facility address, and then it talks about the work weeks and then my recruiter's information, which like I said in my pay video, I went ahead and I blocked out recruiter information and company information because I don't want you guys to think that I'm trying to sell you or get referral codes for my recruiters. I do love my company, I do love my recruiter, but I didn't want this video to focus on that. Start date and end date of my contract are written here. I did not request any approved time offs. Note here that if you do have a vacation planned during your contract or you do have certain days that you need off, make sure that they are written in your contract. Obviously, you should discuss all of this with the nurse manager when you interview, but just having the approval of the nurse manager verbally in the interview is not enough. Make sure that it is written here in your contract. This protects you in case the facility decides to not honor your approved time off request. This gives you permission to cancel the contract through your agency and not face any penalties. So area of work, registered nurse. I'm currently working in a PCU, shift to work, 12-hour nights. So make sure this is in your contract, whether you're working days or nights or rotating shifts, it should say it in your contract. I get paid weekly. All this is the pay information, so I'm going to skip over that for now. I do want to note here under additional compensation, it has my benefits information. So what you need to look for when you get benefits as a traveler, if you decide to go through the agency, is to know when your benefits start. So for me, I signed this contract on August 5th. I started on September 10th. So September 10th was my start date. According to this contract, any opted benefits will begin the first of the month following the start date. So that's good to know, and that should be listed in your contract. Here, it talks about housing. They want me to go ahead and say like I have a permanent address. If I don't have a permanent address, then I maintain a tax home. Here it says, I understand I must maintain a tax home or my untaxed allowances will be treated as wages. And here's the box that you can check if you will not be receiving untaxed allowances. So this just has to do with taxes. They want to acknowledge that they've told you that you need a tax home in order to get untaxed allowances. So that's kind of them covering their butt here. But if you're confused about tax stuff, I go over that in my ebook, which the link to my ebook is in the description below. So you can check that out. That talks all about what you need to know as far as taxes go and what you need to do in order to be able to get your stipends untaxed. next. It tells me that I need to have my compliance done by 9/3, which would be about a week before my start date. This is important if you are doing things quickly. So obviously here I signed on August 5th. I didn't start till 9/3, so I had plenty of time. I had a good month to get my compliance done. But if you have a start date that's super soon, make sure you pay attention to this, because if you don't get your compliance finished by this date that's listed in your contract, then they could possibly cancel your contract. Here again is all of my pay. I do just want to touch here real quick that in that video I do go over overtime rates, which are very important. And I do want to say that since you guys can see my contract, I talk about in that video how I'm not super happy with this overtime rate and what you guys should do differently for your contract. So down here, it tells me that for this hospital, my night shift will be 7P to 7A, which is pretty standard. Let's go to the next page. So guaranteed hours, this one is huge. So this is something that I'm not super happy with for this contract. So let me just take you guys through it. So guaranteed hours and guaranteed pay are different. You want to make sure that you at least have guaranteed hours, but it would be nice to have guaranteed pay. So what that means, guaranteed hours means that they will offer to let you work at least 36 hours a week, except for, you can see this little clause right here that kind of overrides this guaranteed hours thing, which we'll go through. So my guaranteed hours say that travel and local contractors confirmed for 12-hour shifts will be provided a guarantee minimum of 36 scheduled hours per each payroll week. So that means that the facility has to offer me 36 hours a week. Any exceptions or other schedules will be noted in the assignment confirmation. As you remember, back up there, it said agreed time off. So if you do request time off during your contract and that's noted in that area, you don't get the guaranteed hours for that week, obviously. So the calculation of guaranteed minimum work week does not include on-call or callback hours. A guaranteed minimum work week does not apply to per diem contractors. So that doesn't really have anything to do with me, except for the fact that on-call and callback hours should not count towards my 36 hours. Guaranteed hours do not apply during orientation schedules or when the specific unit may be closed. So this actually applied to me because during my first week for orientation, I only got around 30 hours, I think, for that week. Stipend adjustment: in the event of voluntary or involuntary call-off, untaxed per diem stipend will not be paid for hours not worked. So this is important. Sometimes some companies have the policy that they will pay you your stipends as long as you were there and available to work. So if you get involuntarily low census or something like that, they will still pay you your stipends. My company does not. My company prorates my stipends per hours worked. So if I only work 24 hours in 1 week, then I only get stipends for 24 hours worth of work. Some companies will give you your whole stipend for the whole week, even if you get involuntary low census. So that's a good thing to pay attention to, and that's something that I'm not necessarily happy with this company, but it's not a make or break for me. It's not the end of the world. It's very rare that I don't work my full 36 hours at this contract. Any canceled shifts beyond the facility's contracted call-off allowance will be paid. So here you see they put in that call-off allowance, which we'll go over next. But basically, if they exceed this call-off allowance, then they are agreeing to pay me. Please note these approvals may not take place on the same week as the shift was canceled. So that's important to know because your check may be short 1 week and then bigger the next week. So let's talk about this little clause here. For a 13-week assignment, the facility may call the contractor off up to 2 shifts per assignment period. So that is a good thing to pay attention to. Some contracts will have different call-off clauses. So some contracts will say like the facility may call the contractor off up to 1 12-hour shift per week or up to 1 12-hour shift per pay period. Just pay really close attention to this. This call-off clause isn't terrible except for the fact that it doesn't cover partial shifts. That's all you need to know about guaranteed hours, which is what I have. The better option would be guaranteed pay. So guaranteed pay means that no matter how few hours you work, you get paid even if the facility calls you off. A lot of times with guaranteed pay, the facility knows that you have that in your contract and then they won't call you off, but sometimes you can get lucky and get called off even though that's in your contract. So that's a good thing to pay attention to, and definitely have preference over agencies who offer guaranteed pay over guaranteed hours. Every agency words it a little bit different, so I'm not going to say that every contract is going to say guaranteed hours or guaranteed pay and exactly what that means. You just kind of have to read what your contract says and kind of go from there. Next, we have floating. My floating policy basically says I have to float by the same policies that the staff members do at the hospital. It also has a little bit in here that explains that it has to be within my areas that I'm competent in. So if you're a med-surg nurse, they're not allowed to float you to ICU and give you ICU patients. If you say no to floating and you say I don't want to float, send me home, then this little clause here says that they don't have to pay you. It also says that if you refuse to float because you're not competent, they do have to pay you. This is good to note because some hospitals will actually float you between various hospitals within their hospital systems. So I have heard horror stories that people get to the hospital that they're contracted at and they get floated, or maybe they work the first 4 hours at the hospital that they're contracted at. Then they get floated to another hospital within the same hospital system. So they have to get in their car and they have to drive to another hospital and work 4 hours there. And then after those 4 hours, they get floated to another hospital within the hospital system. So they have to get in their car and drive to that hospital and work the last 4 hours of their shift there. Do some research on the facility, see if this is common practice. If this is common practice, you might want to consider putting a no float clause within your contract, and that will protect you against floating like that. Oftentimes though, travelers are the first to float. I'm okay with floating. I don't mind not having a float clause in my contract. I just prefer not to float to other hospitals within the same system. So make sure if that is something that you're worried about with the hospital that you're signing on to, you have that written in your contract. This talks about assignment cancellations. This basically just says that the contractor has to provide a 14-day notice if they want to quit before their assignment begins. Also, this says the facility has the right to refuse the assignment for any prospective contractor if deemed unsatisfactory in its sole discretion. So that is important. That means that the facility can cancel your contract for anything that they deem unsatisfactory. So that is very interesting wording, and that definitely protects them. You can be canceled for anything that they deem unsatisfactory. Make sure that you plan for that. Be careful with your housing. Don't get super long leases. It's better to get month-to-month leases, and just be prepared to get canceled at any time for any reason, because it says it right there in most people's contracts. This is also a good time to note that this contract is between you and your travel agency. So a lot of people think that when they sign a contract, the contract is between them and the hospital. That is not true. The traveler does not have a contract with the hospital. So the traveler has a contract with the agency, you work for the agency, and then the agency has a contract with the hospital. Just make sure you're aware of that. That's a common misconception. Up here is a little clause about canceling after the start of a contract. So this says once the contractor has begun their assignment, if the contractor chooses to cancel any remaining time left on the assignment, the contractor must give a minimum 2 weeks notice. The facility has the right to terminate the assignment immediately of a contractor for any reason, including but not limited to the failure to complete the assignment or demonstrate the ability to meet the standards of performance of the assignment. So again, that's just a wordy way to say that we can cancel you at any time for any reason. And if you want to cancel, you have to give a 2-week notice. Submitting hours, this just tells me how to submit my hours. I actually just email them to my recruiter and she takes care of it for me. Orientation is required for short and long-term assignment staff prior to starting on site. The length and duration of orientation is dependent on the role. I had really good orientation for this assignment. I actually had 4 8-hour days in a classroom and then 2 full 12-hour shifts on the floor. From what I've heard from other travelers, that is not typically the norm. Sometimes you get 1 day computer training, 1 day on the floor, and then you have to be ready to go. I felt that the 4 days classroom and the 2 days on the floor over-prepared me. So I think that depending on your familiarity with the charting system, that you might be okay with 1 day computer orientation and 1 day on the floor. I definitely, after 2 days on the floor, I felt ready to go and ready to be on my own. So this talks about identification badge, you need to wear it, conversion to permanent staff. So this one is interesting, and this is one that my husband had a lot of questions about. The reason that we're traveling is to eventually find somewhere to live. So he asked me, if you're a traveler at a hospital and you fall in love with it, can you switch to staff? So most contracts will have this little clause in their contract, and different companies have different rules on this. So make sure, if you're interested, or you could possibly be interested into switching to staff, you check out this clause in the contract. So my company says the contractor can be converted to permanent staff member after 2 consecutive 13-week assignments. So that's actually a pretty lenient one. Some travel agencies will make you wait a full year after working for them. Make sure you check that out. That's basically just like a non-competition clause to protect the travel agency. They don't want to send all these wonderful nurses there and have the hospital bribe you into staying and then lose their nurses. So that's kind of just a protection for them that they like to throw in. Here it talks about extension. What this extension clause is saying is that after you fulfill the full duration of your contract, so after you're there for 13 weeks, if the facility offers you an extension, you're not able to switch to a different agency to fulfill that extension. You actually have to leave the hospital and then come back on a completely different 13-week assignment in order to switch agencies. So that's kind of another protection for them, so that you don't extend with a different company and then they're actually the ones who recruited you and got you all onboarded and stuff, and then a different company gets to reap the rewards of that. Missed hour penalty clause. This is just saying that if you're going to call in, you need to call in at least 2 hours before the start of the shift, and you need to let your agency and your hospital know. So this is the final part of the contract. This is the cancellation penalty. So upon signing this contract, you agree to fulfill the length of the assignment. So just know that if you sign the contract, you're stuck there for 13 weeks. And that is it. So now we're to the last page. I signed it, my recruiter signed it, and I submitted it. So really the highlights that I want you guys to know here is to, number one, make sure that your pay on your contract is the pay that the recruiter promised you. Number two, make sure that all of the information on your contract is correct. Number three, make sure that if you do have approved time off, you double check this right here and make sure that your approved time off is listed on your contract. Number four, I want you guys to look through this overtime rate and follow the advice on my previous video about pay on making sure that your overtime rate is fair. Also, make sure you have this little clause in here that says that for 36 to 40 hours, you get paid at a certain rate above your hourly rate. Again, I explain all that in the other video. That's just a checkbox that you guys need to check when looking through your contract. So number five, pay special attention to these guaranteed hours and these call-off clauses. Those are super important and they can make a big difference in your paychecks. And finally, number six, I want you guys to pay super close attention to this floating policy and make sure that what is written here is fair and something that you're willing to do. And that's it. That's as easy as it is. I will go ahead and put all 6 of the things that I want you guys to check for in the description below. That way you guys can write it down, and when you're looking through your own contract, you can make sure that you look at all 6 of those things and make sure that you're happy with it. So let's head back over to the video camera and I'll wrap this up for you guys. I'll see you there. Okay guys, I'm back. I hope that all made sense to you guys. If you still have questions, go ahead and put them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. If you have questions other than things about contracts, consider joining my Facebook group, TTT Nursing, where we can talk about all things travel nursing and I can answer all your questions. If you guys still have questions about travel nursing and you want all the answers, you should check out my ebook where I go through the whole process step by step, and I make sure that you're ready for your very first travel contract. There's so much more to it than just contracts, so this should be pretty helpful to you guys. I'll link to Amazon below so you guys can find it and check it out. That's all I have for now, but I look forward to seeing you guys soon.